This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. Today's guest is Jim Keane. Jim is the Director of Fun for ARX. He's Super Slow certified since 2013, transitioned from a career as a trumpet player in pit orchestras for Broadway tours to a career training people in accordance with high-intensity training principles. As an outsider to the field, and having trained people with a wide variety of gravity-based tools like Nautilus, Med-X, Super Slow systems, barbells, etc., and more modern tools, he has a unique perspective on strength training and how it can be developed into a more highly valued and ubiquitous element of health and fitness in the 21st century. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me again. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it too, and I'm excited to make history in that we are doing video for the first time, I believe, on High Intensity Business.
First one. Hell yeah.
I think it's great that we can do that with you looking quite orange. I'm not sure if that's a tan or good lighting.
It's a little bit of both. I'm down here in Austin, and I have been basically living in the sun the last 3 or 4 days. But I also have kind of red, circadian lighting in my kitchen. And so the combination makes me look just positively orange. It's fantastic.
I need to sort some of that lighting for myself. Is that kind of red lights you've got then, or in the kitchen there?
It's a little bit of both. So I have it's like a ceiling fan that has 4 spots for light bulbs, and so I have 4 incandescents. 2 of them are red, 2 of them are sort of a little orangish yellow tint. So I'll have the orangish yellow ones on during the day. And then after sundown, you switch it to the red ones. And so right now I got the orange yellow ones plus daylight from a window and sliding door. So try to keep it al natural as possible here.
And you have that throughout your house, do you? Those lights?
What?
Do you have that type of lighting? Do you have that type of lighting throughout your home? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So in all the rooms, there's the daytime set of lights and then the nighttime set of lights, and I just takes 30 seconds at sundown to switch them all out, and it looks to first timers, it looks really, really strange. So it's fantastic when people come over after sundown. The place looks like a dark room or something. It's very, very homey, very inviting.
Cool. All right. So awesome. So I wanted to kick this one off by talking about ARX in terms of exercise selection, because we've touched on ARX a lot in previous podcasts with your colleagues and yourself. So I wanted to touch on some new areas that I perhaps haven't gone into detail with you or your colleagues on. So talking about exercise selection, Tell me, what should we perhaps starting with maybe the Alpha or Omni, depending on the best way to do this. What are the range of exercises that you can do on these machines?
The simplest one, simplest place to start is the Alpha. So for people who have pictures in their heads, if they've ever seen pictures of ARX machines, there's two of them, two models. It's like a car company that has two models of car. One's the Alpha and one's the Omni. Now, the one that's sort of the gateway drug, as we say, to strength training for people who don't do any strength training, that's the Alpha. And the Alpha is, imagine a forklift laid on its back. And it just moves back and forth. And so that's the leg press. We put foot pads up and have a leg press. Arms come off of that, metal arms that you can grab onto and push and pull. So it's a compound row and it's a horizontal press. And so it's built around the big three. It's legs, push, pull, the front of you, the back of you, and your legs. Full body workout in 3 moves from one seat, just as efficient and simple as possible. No balance, no coordination, no agility. The barriers to entry are all removed. And so this machine is for the masses. It's like a public health thing. If you wanted to give somebody strength training, that's the Alpha is the easiest way to do it. And so it's built around the big three. You can also do calf flexion, so dorsiflexion, extension. You can do also torso flexion and torso extension. And so the torso flexion exercise is where you straighten the arms and then you curl yourself downwards and forwards as the machine moves very, very slowly. It's short range of motion around the rectus abdominis. So you have a very short range of motion and a slow motor speed. And then when you're curled all the way down, then it moves the opposite direction and you try not to let it uncurl you. And you resist as it uncurls you. And so that's for the abs. And then the torso extension would be almost like a seated Romanian deadlift. It's a hinge movement and you are first leaning back as hard and fast as you can, and then you're resisting being leaned forward. So it's like a row, except your elbows never break, and you just hinge at the hips. So that's the Alpha, and it's 3 primary moves and 3 other moves that you can also do, but it's designed around the big 3, leg press, chest press, and compound row. And then the Omni. The Omni's for people like me who would get bored pretty quickly with just leg press, chest press, row, even though my parents, for instance, that's all they need once every week or 2 to completely avoid the bone and muscle loss associated with aging. Just sit down, Ma, push, pull. You don't need to learn anything. You don't need to just use your muscles and you'll get the benefit. You're fine.
So great. You've got your parents on it now.
Oh yeah. They're up in Chicago, and there's a guy. Actually, you should put this in the show notes because he's looking for someone to help him out in the business. You probably have some listeners who are looking to either train on ARX or train somewhere that has ARX, or even just a super slow facility that they're looking to get on with and get some clientele and get a book together. There's a guy named Marshall Oken, and I'll put his contact information. I'll give it to you. Guy named Marshall. I met him in 2009. A good old friend of mine, and he's the one who introduced me to Super Slow in person. The first MedX equipped facility I ever went to, and he ended up getting an Alpha, the machine I just described, along with his MedX in a small footprint studio in Lake Forest, Illinois, along the North Shore, northwest suburb of Chicago. And so he trained my parents since about 2010, 2011. Somewhere around there. And so he's been training them, and the difference in their lives, of course, has been just like you would expect. But he sent me a note actually just a couple weeks ago, now that I'm thinking about it, saying he's looking to pass this along. He's kind of retirement age, and he's looking to move on to other stuff. But he doesn't want to get rid of the studio. He has a bunch of people he's helping. And so I guess it's just like a call to your audience. If anyone wants to get in touch with Marshall and say, hey, yeah, I'll come get an interview and see if I could. He's looking for a young go-getter who's looking to get his hands in the clay and mold a studio. And he's got a full line of MedX and an ARX Alpha at his disposal. And so, anyhow, that's just an aside.
No, that's awesome. That's what a big part of this podcast is all about for me. Is creating more of a community and name dropping people like that and opportunities like that, so that we can all kind of connect with each other. So no, I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah. So any young, hungry, aspiring super slow trainers, get in touch with Marshall. He might have a spot for you. But anyhow, so yeah, my folks have been using ARX. My dad since 2014, and continues to use it. The early prototypes, up to what we're doing now. And so, but anyway, so the Omni, the other machine, has a couple of dozen different things you can do. You can do a pull. It runs on cables. If you've seen pictures of it, it runs on these cables that are just like the cable pulley machines at the gym, and that you can clip anything you like to the end of the cable. Same drive system, same motor, same everything. But you can do a pull down with any attachment you prefer. The big wide grip, the mag grips, whatever you like, you could clip onto there. From the top tower, you can also do triceps press downs. You can also hang. I like to hang ab straps. The ab straps you see people doing like knee lifts with their arms in the thing. So you can use those same straps, buckle yourself in, and you put your elbows through the straps and then do a pullover. So it's a seated pullover, and it's pulling you up, and it's just killer.
So how do you stay in the seat? Is there a belt?
Yeah, there's a seat belt. Keep it from flying off the face of the earth. But
it is a dynamic excursion. Like, you are moving. It's not right. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you're fully tucked down, and then it pulls you up, and then you go a little bit above horizontal so the straps don't fly off, and then you come back down, and it's just killer for the for the lats. You have big barn door lats after a couple months, but you can also do that. And then as far as pressing, we have overhead press, incline like military style press, horizontal press, and decline press, and of course pec fly versions of all those angles as well. You can do deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, belt squat, which is killer, bicep curls, upright row, bent over row, anything up from the ground, because we have a platform that has a pulley in the center of it. You can clip any attachment you like, of course. You can clip to that platform. And then there's also a pulley in the front, from which you can do compound row, rear delt movements, any unilateral or rotator cuff working type stuff. And then there's stuff that it's not even designed for that you can do if you feel like getting weird with it. But it's designed just like,
such as,
like the Alpha is. So these the unauthorized movements on ARX. It's basically, we want to provide a platform that allows people to get the most bang for their time buck and the most bang for their metabolic buck. So it's designed around the big compound movements and the easiest ways to shift between those. But also you can do, like I was describing, shoulders, biceps, triceps, lats. It's kind of the people who know their way around a gym, who are a little bit more meatheady and bro-ish like me, will kind of prefer the Omni. But the masses, it's like automatic transmission versus manual transmission. If you're a car guy, if you're a race car driver, you want the manual. You want, a little more versatility and control, and you're bored by just an automatic. It does all the shifting for you, and forget that. But the masses are all, in America anyway, are all driving automatic just because it's done for you. It's easier. We teach people to drive on the automatics for that reason. So if someone, and in our bubble, everyone does some sort of strength training, but outside of our little bubble, like you realize, most people don't do anything. They're not doing shit. And so how do you get them from no strength training to just the 80-20? Well, here, come sit down. Come sit down, do 3 big movements from one seat, and just once per week or once every 2 weeks. And it's just simple, no learning curve. So that's the alpha. So
even as a manual driver myself, similar to you, I think I'd still want that leg press though.
Well, the leg press is killer. And the belt squat, there's a learning curve. If you know how to squat, normally it's not a big learning curve, but for most people, it's way easier to just sit down and do the leg press. And that, as like the people at the REC, we brought the Alpha, as you remember, and just blowing people up on the leg press, and everyone was very impressed. But it's potent, and it's a low barrier to entry, so it's a killer as well.
Oh yeah. It's always been interesting to me because we all in the UK and Ireland, it's 90% manual driving. I've never driven an automatic car, and it's the complete opposite in the US. No, serious.
For fuel savings too.
Sorry?
For fuel savings as well as space.
What you mean? Why we prefer manual?
Yeah, why you drive manual? Manual has greater fuel efficiency, and so with fuel being more expensive in Europe and the Isles, that's probably one of the big reasons for people driving manuals.
Oh, I didn't know that. I always thought it was because the cars that were automatic, that were available to us in the UK and probably Ireland as well, weren't that great. Whereas you have a whole load of other cars available in the US. Maybe it's not the case now, I don't know, which were good, which were automatic. So I wondered if it was a car preference, which meant that something to do with that. I have no idea.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Definitely beyond my depth. I can drive a stick shift, and I have before, but it's the same. It's like if I'm not really an enthusiast, I just want to get from A to B, which is how the masses see like strength training. Same idea with the Alpha. So most people in America just drive automatics, but we do have some enthusiasts.
I was in my friend's car the other day, and he's got an automatic, and it's unusual to have that, right? As I was saying, and I'm sitting there and we're talking about it. I'm like, so what is it like? And he's like, well, look, I don't even have to change gear now. And, I don't have to do any clutch control to make sure I don't fall down a hill. I'm like, this is amazing. Why don't we all have this? So anyway, quick digression. But, I recently digressed with Mike Petrella, about healthcare and how it differs in the US, the UK and Ireland. And someone really enjoyed that bit of diversion, to get multiple perspectives on. So I figured, this is another diversion, that will give you some insight into the differences in, automatic and manual in the different countries.
Yeah. Well, as the ARX team could tell you, I'm not good for much, but I'm good for diversions and getting conversations off the rails on tangents. So
I'm well aware. So I guess one of the concerns I guess I would have with the Omni and Alpha is it doesn't sound like there is a good way to address the neck, or am I wrong? And grip as well is another thing.
With the neck, nothing specifically designed for that. Although we've seen people with, you've seen the head harness that hangs a chain off the forehead. So we've seen people do that sitting on the Omni, connecting that head harness to, instead of a weight, instead of a saucer, you connect it to the platform pulley cable. And so you turn the motor speed down very, very slowly because you don't want to do rapid movements with the neck. Exactly, so it might be, we can program it for, typically with the neck, I'll do either 15 or 20 seconds even in each direction. And so the motor is moving imperceptibly slowly, and you can do at least straight back and forth, flexion and extension. It's not designed for, like the MedX Core series has a lot of, whether it's rotary torso or the 4-way cervical neck or things like that, that's a very specialized use case. And so ARX isn't designed, for instance, to do any rotational neck movement. You can, like I just described, do matched and thus safe concentric and eccentric for both flexion and extension, up and down. And so that is very valuable for neck health and for whiplash or for preventing concussions and for that whole thing. So you can find a way to do it, although you would need something more specialized to do cervical rotation. And then as far as grip, you could do forearm work, and by doing so, do grip work. But what you also find is that by doing just the regular compound pulling movements, when you're doing pull down or row, there's a far greater force demand with ARX than there is with a weight, because you're allowed to go at your maximum all of the time. And as a result, your grip and the small muscles of your forearms are fighting the highest force capacity that the biggest, strongest muscles of your torso will ever produce. And so in doing, your grip will always be the weak link, but it's very different than in a MedX compound row. You have to select a weight that's so low, but beneath your capacity, that you can go for 90 to 120 seconds. And so that's a very small amount of weight compared to what you could be doing. And so your grip, yes, your grip is the limiting factor, but your grip's not working as hard as it could be because, after all, the weight that you are being made to lift is far below your capacity. Well, in ARX world, the weight that you're being made to lift, the resistance that your body is encountering, is right at your capacity. There is no underloading. And so, because of that, the biggest, strongest muscles of your torso on your back are now going as hard as they can without ripping your hands off the bar. And so you have very potent and robust work for the grip through by virtue of the fact that you are now being loaded to your capacity and properly loading mainly the eccentric, but also properly loading the concentric as well all of the time. So in the process, you get very, very potent grip work.
Awesome. Yeah, I just did a podcast, actually, a roundtable with Dwayne Wimmer, Michael Petrella, and Bill Crawford yesterday on the MedX medical line. So specifically looking at, I think it's 5 key medical machines, some of which you mentioned there. And it sounds like, at least where we are at the moment in terms of what's available regarding exercise machines, is that if one has the capital, that a nice complement to an Alpha and Omni would be, MedX medical neck rotation, and was it the cervical neck, maybe lower back as well, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely the lumbar extension machine.
Lumbar extension
machine is just, it hasn't been replicated, and many have tried, and it's fantastic. So I'd recommend it highly.
Yeah, because I think you talked about trunk extension with the Alpha, right? Which is for the lower back. Am I correct, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, the idea is you could do deadlifts or Romanian deadlifts,
right.
Or like I was describing, that sort of seated Romanian deadlift, the torso extension, and anything like that will involve the low back. But if you go back and read Arthur's stuff in the 90s, his MedX writings, the point was you would, and he was the first one who was able to test it, was to find that the lumbar extensors could be isolated and strengthened specifically without any of the surrounding stuff. So you could it would appear to you that your back got stronger if you were able to put up better and better numbers on that torso extension or lift more and more weight in Romanian deadlift. Oh, my back got stronger is what you would think, when in fact what actually took place was that all of the other muscles that accomplish that hinging extension movement, and that's your hamstrings connecting above the half line, that's obviously your glutes, and the other muscles surrounding your erector spinae, they all got stronger. They're the prime movers, and your lumbar spine was not completely like a stabilizer sort of muscle, but it wasn't the prime mover. And so it would be helped. It's not nothing, in your lumbar spine muscles wouldn't be getting weaker. So that's good. But the only way so far as I'm aware to specifically strengthen those lumbar muscles is by removing the ability of all those other muscles to get in on the act. And Arthur's solution to that was to figure out that mafia contraption that trapped you in one place with your knees above your hips, and you're just like kind of crank you in. And once you're like that, and you're doing the movement, you can feel the difference. But a poor man's version of that, is a torso extension. That's good. That's cool. But for a medical application that's looking to be more targeted, the lumbar extension machine's great.
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining that. There's nothing quite like the MedX medical lumbar extension machine. It feels, when you first do it, it feels so incredibly scary, and you feel like, oh my God, I've been told my whole life that I shouldn't be loading my lower back like this. And then just you go from that to feeling so empowered and so much. It's such a great feeling when you feel that stimulus on your lower back muscles, knowing that you're doing so safely. A great machine that I miss a lot. And like you said there's very few other exercises that can, or there isn't probably any, that can, isolate the lumbar extension muscles as well. And there's plenty of research to show that from Arthur Jones, but also
James Steele did a bunch of that, didn't he?
Steele did. Yeah, they've done a bunch of research showing the different just showing that it's more effective at isolating those muscles. But I've also done content with Dr. Ted Dreisinger, who's an expert on chronic lower back pain, and he ranked all of the different exercises you can do, or the ones that he advocates for the lower back. But he said nothing comes close to the MedX lower back. So
yeah, it's fantastic.
Cool. All right. So that was a good place to start. I wanted to give people a taste of the exercise selection. And it's interesting for me as someone who maybe in the near future will be opening some kind of studio, all yet to be confirmed. Yeah, it's. I want to learn more about the ARX capability, as it will definitely be one of the tools we'll be reviewing for that. So let's talk about the HIIT industry for a moment. So you're someone who's gone through the super slow certification. I think it was Drew Bay that helped you through that. I'd love to hear what you like and dislike about that world. We could start there.
Yeah, what I like is that we're all helping people. Like, we're here to help. And as you talk to more and more super slow facility owners, but also their trainers, that's the sense you get, is that we're trying to help. We're here to help. We have this tool that we've become enamored of to help, and it's the most potent tool in my toolbox, and I like it. So that's the first thing I like about the industry, is everyone's here to help. A second thing is that it works. It's legitimate. So there's a lot of people who are here to help, and then they are hawking some product that doesn't work or some thing that's going to waste people's time. But this actually, like when you bite on the coin, to make sure it's real, like this actually works, and you can measure it. And so that's another thing I like. And it's such a rare sort of rabbit hole to go down. Like, it's not the big popular thing. It's not everyone and their mom on Instagram talking about their super slow workout. And it's, there's all sorts of, we all know what the other popular things are that people do otherwise. And a lot of people have reasons for that. But I like that like-minded people have sort of this rabbit hole that we've all gone down. Like, anyone listening to this has gone down this rabbit hole and has found this really effective, potent, robust therapy, basically, that has, strength training. If it were a drug, it would be a billions of dollars per year industry. And so we're helping, and it works, and it's legitimate, and we have kind of our tribe. And those are all things that I like. It's cool. And then as far as where we're headed, you can sort of look back over the last 20, 30 years and think, like we asked this, like, what's changed? What's new? What's the, and so there's small changes in technology. There's big changes in technology. There's as far as like ARX and that whole world. But even aside from the tool that you're using, I don't necessarily like is the distinction between a trainer whose goal is, and we mentioned this with yours and mine and Mike's little quick roundtable at REC, people who are more interested in showcasing their talent as trainers, and their skill and how good at this they are, and less concerned with helping larger and larger and larger numbers of people in their community. And some people I see doing things that will either prevent their future scaling, things that aren't scalable, it can't grow, and they're comfortable with their little fiefdom, their little kingdom. And they have I've got my 60 or 70 clients, and I'm going to not try to aggressively expand that, which to each their own. That's cool. But there are some people who would like to expand, who become bitter that they are not expanding, but simply are not doing the things that would permit such expansion. And then at the same time, they're very pugnacious, and they're very getting in fights with people on the internet of all places, and flaming people in comment sections. It's, if you want to get down in the mud and wrestle with the pigs, that's fine, and it can be fun sometimes. But it's counterproductive to what I would say is the movement or the mission. You'll say out of one side of your mouth that you want to bring proper strength training to the masses, but then you'll spend your time tearing down people on your team, tearing down the very people who could help bring proper strength training to the masses, even though their flavor of proper strength training is just a little bit different than yours. Any little difference is enough to completely cut them off and to put them on the shit list. Yeah, we're on the same team. Yeah, we're doing basically the same thing, but you have this, you think 85 seconds to failure is acceptable. So fuck you. And I'm going to put you on the shit list, and you're not going to be part of my tribe. And I need to, instead of spending time building the movement and building what we're trying to do, I'm going to spend time not even worrying about the public and the people I could be helping. I'm going to spend time worrying about showing everyone else who are mutual friends, just showing them that I'm right and you're wrong, and that I am king shit fuck mountain. I'm the man, and everyone else needs to just listen to what I have to say. And there's a lot of that attitude going around, which is it can be satisfying on a certain level if that's the place you're in psychologically, but even the people doing it would have to admit in their more reasonable and sober moments that it's counterproductive and it's not helping. And I think what they fear is that this type of training will gain popularity in an iteration that runs a little bit counter to what they've been preaching the whole time. Like, what if everyone discovers high intensity training and my name's not on the front of it? What happens if and I did so much to promote this, and this, and I did all this work and I've spent years. And so what if it gets really popular, but nobody knows my name? And a lot of people are really afraid of that. So they kind of have a 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake, where they're like doing what they can with their clients, and it's cool. But at the same time, they're very territorial and they very much care who gets the credit. And anybody in their sphere who disagrees or who has a different perspective or a different set of opinions or has a different experience with their clients doing other protocols and other different things, anything that's dissonant gets removed. And so I guess I've been seeing a lot of that for, since I became aware of this community in the first place, but it goes back into the 90s and into the 80s and beforehand. And it's always been that way. And I think that's the big thing holding this back. And so that's the dam that's up. And so I don't so much like that, but that's just the human condition. That's in every field, you'll have a little bit of that. And so the idea is, let's make the service so good. Let's make high intensity training so easy to deliver, so ubiquitous, so easy to explain and experience, and make it so palatable to the public that it won't matter about these voices who are trying to claim territory and trying to make themselves right and make everybody else wrong and make themselves look good and everyone else not look so good. We can sort of overcome that, and that's the virtue of the movement. You have so many good people, so many people whose hearts are in the right place who are just trying to help. And if you have enough of those people, eventually it's an idea whose time has come, and that's how paradigms get shifted. So yeah, that's kind of, from my view, that's how I see the industry moving forward.
Yeah, well said. And I have covered this to a degree with James Fisher, PhD, a while back. We did I can't remember what we called it now, but we spent a lot of time in the episode just talking about the infighting, and it was a try. In my intention was to sort of try and galvanize more positive relations within the HIIT community, and whether or not it helped with that, I don't know. But hopefully, I think we do need to talk about this stuff because it does make me quite sad. Because what's crazy is it happens on so many levels. So like you've got HIIT versus traditional training, right? So you've got like, I'm not going to name names or organizations, but you've got like people that talk about reps, sets, volume, and then you've got the HIIT guys, and there's obviously a conflict there. But then you've also within HIIT, you've got all these factions as well. And there's conflict there, and it's like people are just alienating themselves, and I'm just not sure how productive that is. And I think sometimes I think to myself, if there was more unity, and like you're saying, putting differences aside, even within HIIT and also within the greater strength training community, I just can't help but think that would be so much more effective in terms of making strength training a more popular activity for people, since 90% of people or 95% of people don't do anything.
They're doing nothing. They retreat to the cardio machines, or they just go walk around the block and call it a day.
Yeah. So that's good. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could Give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the High Intensity Business podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation of your ARX machines. What is it in high intensity training that you see which you disagree with?
I'd say, one of the things, kind of like what we were just talking about, I guess you could call them purists, but I don't see it as that pure. But you know what I mean when I say purist, someone who's dogmatic or by the book. And so someone who is unwilling to entertain the very good result because it was not achieved in the prescribed way. For instance, if I'm training someone on ARX and they, like I think I might have mentioned during the first episode, I can't remember, Bonnie, back when I was training people in Chicago, I had this client, Bonnie, and Bonnie was 62 years old. She comes in, she says, I don't like strength training. I don't like working hard with my muscles. I don't like the burning sensation. I didn't even like the staircase to get up here to this location. I don't like you. I don't like this place. I don't like these goofy looking machines that you have. But my grandson says I need to be strength training and he sent me here. So he bought me like 4 sessions. So here I am. What do you got for me? And so what I did with Bonnie was I just had her on the alpha do a leg press, a chest press in a row, and that's it. And I said, we're going to go for 2 minutes here. And I want you to give me just whatever you think is a half-ass easy effort. Okay, so you're going to push in this direction, then you're going to resist. But again, don't try hard. Whatever you do, don't try hard. So she goes for 2 minutes, and it's pretty easy, and she draws some result on the screen. Okay, good. And now it's chest press, and here's how you do it. And remember, half-ass effort. So you do that, and then the row. Okay, I'll see you in 7 days. Oh, okay. And she comes in 7 days later, and I say, now that is what, see that gray line? That's what you did last week. I don't want you to try hard. I want you to barely beat what you did last week. I want you to just trace the line so you're a little bit more than you did last week. But for God's sake, don't try hard. You understand? And she goes, okay, fine. And so she does it. She traces her line, and she goes, and she gets the happy marimba sound, and it turns green. It says you're up 8.7% or whatever, and she does that for all 3. Okay, and now come back 7 days. Now she comes back, she keeps doing this process, and the idea is she wasn't even anywhere close to a hard, demanding exertion. she wasn't anywhere close to failure, even though with ARX, there's no such thing as failure. But you know what I mean, that level of intensity. And so she was, however, getting strength training. She was getting progressive overload. She was getting concentric and eccentric contractions. She was placing a demand on the muscles. And eventually, around the 6 or 7 week mark, she was doing her chest press. And one of the negatives, all of a sudden, I see the giant peak of because she actually decided to start pushing. I said, Bonnie, whoa, what are you doing? And she, well, I just thought that I just see what would happen if I, and what she was describing was she was finally comfortable enough. She finally felt safe enough with me and with the machines and with everything. She had small wins. Each week she was winning. She was doing better than the week before. In fact, her half-ass effort improved 40 to 50% on the force reading in that 5 or 6 weeks. And so finally, she was able to really give it a go because her bones, her ligaments, her muscles over that month and a half had adapted, had become accustomed to this level of exertion. And by 2 or 3 months in, she's working just as hard as any of my other clients. But had I been very dogmatic and very, like I see a lot in the HIIT world, if you're not working out super intensely all the time, then get out. And half of a sure thing's better than twice of nothing. I think that we're trying to give people this result, and HIIT's a good tool, but the tool can sometimes be modified. So sometimes what I don't like to see, it's like if you've never vomited from a set of bicep curls and you're doing it wrong and you need to go hike up your skirt and try again, and that's cool. That's fine. If you're whipping a guy with a bullwhip in a Quonset hut in Florida, like I get it, and that's cool, and it's legendary, in fact, and that's great. For the minority of the minority of the minority of people who are willing to do that. It's a great result that can be accomplished. But we need to open our perspective and open our focus. High intensity training is a tool, and it needs to be more of a Swiss Army knife and less of a hammer. And so what I see that I don't like sometimes is that insistence on the one way. There's not any one way. High intensity training is a good model, but the map is not the territory. It's just a model that we can use and we can adjust it. And so I think it's like the real versus the assumed objective. And people talk about in the actual act of the training. When you're a HIIT practitioner, the real versus the assumed objective. The assumed objective is I'm going to take everyone in from the public and give them this prescription. And that's what people think the objective is. The objective is to administer high intensity training to people because high intensity training is the goal and the people are beneath that. The people serve the goal. When in fact, it's the reverse. The people are the objective. We're trying to help our communities. And high intensity training is just a tool. It's below. So it's the real objective is the people. The assumed objective is I'm going to execute this protocol at people. And so I think a mix-up of those two can lead to a lot of stagnation and frustration when people see their business failing to grow, even though they're one of the best in the world at this. How come I only have this many clients? How come there aren't people lined up around the door to come train with me, the master trainer who has been doing this for years and I know everything about everything? And how come people aren't appreciating my genius? And you get wrapped up in this sort of weird, who is the guy? Leo DiCaprio played him in The Aviator. The spruce goose.
Yeah, I know who you mean, but I don't know the guy's name. Yeah.
Oh man, that's an obvious one. I feel bad. But anyway, so that guy, you slowly go crazy and people won't recognize your genius. And it's because you have put the assumed objective in your priority and the real objective has taken a back seat. And when you do that, eventually it falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That was quite profound and very interesting to hear. Now, I wanted to move on to some critique you and ARX have had. Talk about that for a moment. So, Renex did the famous Dumper series, which is, I think, a lot of articles. I think it was something like 10 articles around that. And I've read a good half of those. And, it was interesting, for sure. But I felt like in some places it was quite dogmatic, no true Scotsman. If you're not doing it exactly like this, then, kind of echoing some of what you said earlier. But I don't want to critique it. I wouldn't want to critique it too much without, the authors actually being able to respond. So I probably won't go beyond that. However, I suppose let's just start before I ask a couple questions on this. I'd just like to get your thoughts on, as someone who's read it, and I think you might have actually responded on the blog. I did see Jim, but I'm not sure if that was you, leave a comment. So I don't know if that's yourself.
I don't remember doing that, but it was 2011 or 2012. So
it was a long time ago.
And not remember it, yeah.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say, I wonder if the ARX tech has maybe evolved as well since 2012 and might handle some of the concerns, maybe not, I don't know. But yeah, do you want to just give your thoughts on the series of articles, what you made of that?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is I've never met any of the RenX guys in person, so I can't speak to, like I like those guys or I don't like those guys, or, I've never met them in person, so you can't, I don't know, never met them. And then there's only so much you could tell on the internet with someone and their writing or their comments or even a video of them. People are just different in person. So I just want to say I have nothing against the RenX guys because I haven't met them in person. I'm sure if we met, we would get along and have great discussions and it'd be great. And also along the lines of what I was saying a little bit before, like we're on the same team. And if you've seen the numbers that they did, like Josh and those guys down in Florida or Overload up in the Cleveland area, they're helping a lot of people. And they have helped a lot of people. Like they've done incredible things for their community. So if we have differences of opinion in how we're doing certain things, it should not be lost that we're on the same team. We're doing the same thing in that we're helping people, and they are very effective at doing that in a safe and efficient way. And so hats off to them. And we're probably, the Venn diagram is like 90% is in the middle of what we're trying to do. And we just have differences in how we're doing it. They have their tools that they use and the protocols that they use with those tools. And then I might use a different tool, ARX or the MedX lumbar machine. Like I'm not completely all ARX all the time. That's not, it's just another tool, useful as it is. As far as your question about has the technology developed since then? Yes, profoundly. And in fact, by the time they were writing in 2011 or publishing that in 2011, 2012, they were speaking about the machines as they existed as prototypes, circa 2009, 2010. And so, and the other thing is, to my knowledge, none of them have trained people using ARX for any length of time or even one session. I feel like they would have gotten a session or tried it once or twice. I should hope so. If they're going to be writing about it like that, I would hope they would at least have felt it. But again, that was circa 2009, 2010 type of machines. And so I would just suggest that perhaps their perspective would change a little bit with use, with time. Because I started training people using ARX as my only tool in 2013. And I had, of course, read those articles, and I took a bet on ARX. I was like, okay, I see where you're coming from. But all the pros, all the cons, I really still believe in the technology and what it can do. But I'm glad they wrote that stuff because that gave me a whole bunch of stuff to watch out for, a whole bunch of stuff to be careful of. I'm like, you know what? You're right. If someone really does try to nut up and lock out and brace and do all these things against a robot, Snap City. It's no good. And so I'm glad they wrote it. I'm glad they voiced those concerns, mainly because after now 6 years training people on ARX, each thing that they wrote in there that they, I don't want to say hallucinated, that they predicted was going to happen. They said, like, here are the problems with the dumpers. This is a problem, and the result of this problem will be X. Here's another problem, and this will cause Y, and so forth and so on. And there were, like you said, multiple articles. And it just didn't, none of that happened. It just ain't so. It's just not the case. Like there, I don't know how many different, like, I was describing to you before, like the guy who was a stagecoach driver. Yeah. Who had never tried a car and never driven people around in a car. He had just heard about what a car was and what it, in theory, could do. And he started telling people that it's unnatural to go faster than like a horse's top speed is, 20, 30 miles an hour or whatever it is. But miles per hour wasn't even a way they were thinking because they didn't have cars. And so they didn't think of speed in that term. But it's unnatural for a human to travel that fast through space. it'll be dangerous. It'll cause big problems. And well, then you fast forward 100 years and everyone's doing it. Like, it's just not the case. And we're all still, the risk is acceptable, in other words, and billions of people drive cars every day, even with the inherent risks. And so it's not unfounded. Like the stagecoach driver who just didn't have experience, it's not his fault. He was just ignorant of of what was actually happening in reality. And so enamored was he of what he thought would happen, that the thought experiment seemed more real than the actual thing. The other thing is that equestrians are going to keep riding horses, even if we're over here building teleporters. So usually we use that argument to talk about people. So this is going to replace the gym? No, ARX doesn't replace anything because people like going to the gym. People like lifting weights, and it's a good activity that there's psychological benefit from it and so forth and so on. And so like the guys who are of the mind of the Renex guys, you know what? I don't like the dumpers. I don't like the motorized stuff. I'm just not into that. I'm going to keep doing it the way I want to do it. And we say, that's awesome. Like, keep doing what you're doing. You're successful. You're helping people. If my parents lived in Cleveland, I would send them to you to train. It's a good thing that they're doing. So we're not trying to say that they're stupid for not doing this or that or the other. That's not where we're at all. But I would say that the things that were written might have a sound rhetorical basis behind them and good reasoning, but when put to the test of reality, simply don't pan out. And so we've been training people. There were over 80,000 workouts that happened on an ARX machine somewhere in the world in 2018. And we can see that in our dashboard in the cloud. And the massive wave of injuries and lawsuits and people hurting themselves just hasn't materialized. It's just not the case.
Have you had some injuries?
In person, the only, I guess you could call them injuries. There was, back in 2017, I want to say it was, or no, 2016. There was a guy who, the next day after our workout, he said, "Hey man, I've got I'm a little sore in my neck. Like it hurts to rotate it too far." And I was looking back through in my mind, the workout the previous day. And he's like one of my young, male friends. And so we were kind of going a little too hard on a pull down, and he was shrugging up and doing all sorts of weird stuff. And normally it's fine. But I then saw okay, well, next time we're going to, just for the next workout, we're going to cover the screen. So you're not trying to just get high numbers, and we're just going to do it in perfect form and have you keep the shoulders down away from the ears and so forth and so on. And we did, and he was able to avoid that in the future. But no, I haven't. And of course, who can say what goes, I suppose, unreported. But when you see all the studies that have been done about what happens in a weight room, each year, just the numbers of injuries, or the CrossFit injuries, the forum, that is objectively dangerous. And you see that. And by now, we would be seeing a larger, because we would hear about it. We would hear people saying, "Hey, 6 of my clients got injured this week. We think that maybe this isn't as safe as you say it is."
And we haven't gotten the anti-ARX people would be reporting that too, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
The slightest hint of an injury.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the Tesla self-driving thing. One person dies in a Tesla self-driving accident. Everyone freaks out. Meanwhile, 10,000 people die every day in a car. And so, just because it's new, there's a bias, a recency bias of the sky is falling. But it's also a paradigm shift that many people aren't able, willing, or ready to make, where, for instance, they call it overloading the negative. It's a commonly used parlance. So I don't like the dumpers that overload the negative. And the dumper series, I know they were talking a little bit about the X-Force machines, which at the time, the weight stack, 45 degrees, and when you went to negative, and that shift could feel like dumping the weight. So I think that they're maybe not talking in the whole series. They're not talking specifically about ARX, and I understand that. But the idea of if you've been underloading the negative your whole life, and if everyone you learned strength training from had been underloading the negative just because they're limited by the tool they're using, you would indeed see something like ARX that matches your negative force capacity. You would see that as overloading, even though it's not. Overloading is So ARX matches your resistance and in fact can never be excessive because it's adapting to you, right? So it's impossible for ARX to overload anything. It perfectly loads. It matches. It's adaptive.
I'm glad you said that because that was one of my questions was, look, if it adapts, then surely it's not going to be too excessive on the negative. That was one of my critiques of the article, I think.
Yeah. And that's one of the, it's like how Doug McGuff often describes an exercise getting more effective and safer in the process. And so ARX is a little bit like that, where it's a form of resistance that on the high end gives you whatever you give it. Like if you put the screws to it, it'll put the screws to you, it'll match you. And so that's why people who like high force sort of stuff, they feel that they can do that. However, there's also a safety component because it'll only ever give you what you first give it. So it's never acting upon you without your say so. And that was one of the things in the articles is like, we don't like the principle that this machine is doing something to you. We like the principle of you are lifting the weight. You become the machine almost is what they're saying in the article. Yeah. And it's your behavior is dictated by this machine then instead of being voluntary and volitional, like when you choose to engage with a weight. However, under scrutiny, those two positions you realize are switched. When you lift a weight, you've made a commitment to lower that weight. And as soon as you lift it off of the ground, it is acting on you without your say so 100% of the time. And you can prove this by getting in a bench press and holding it out above your neck and then letting go. It acts on you. In this case, on your neck. In a barbell squat, it acts on your spine. Even in super slow systems or Renix or except the eye machines, they don't go anywhere. But all the dynamically moving machines, if you disengage, they will act. And you might be in the way. And so with a weight, with a gravity-based form of resistance, it's always acting on you 100% of the time. Pretty dangerous, if you're asking me. With ARX, it never acts on you without you, moment by moment, choosing volitionally to act on it. And in fact, if you stop, if you let go, the resistance drops to zero and you're perfectly safe all of the time. And at your top end, if you're going at maximum, it'll give you everything you give it and not an ounce more. Or if you're rehabbing a joint and you need 6 pounds of resistance, it'll give you 6 pounds and not an ounce more. So the resistance is inherently incapable of overloading somebody, which is a great safety feature. Imagine a resistance that can never be too much. It can never be excessive. That's insane. That's a magical barbell that just is as heavy as you need it when you need it to be heavy in these max eccentrics and even max concentrics or isometrics or whatever you're doing. But then as soon as you let off, it lets off. Oh man, shut up and take my money. That's great. You mean I can almost never get hurt on this thing? Well, almost never. There's a bad way to use any tool. And the only way, like you're familiar with when a peak force exceeds the force absorbing capacity of the muscle and joint system in question, snap city, and that's when an injury occurs. It's when a peak force exceeds the structural capacity of the thing. So on ARX, if it is adaptive, then the only way to hurt yourself would be to rapidly try to interact with the machine, to jab at it, to go from a complete rest to a max and attack the ARX machine. That would cause a little jab in force that could exceed the structural capacity of a tendon or a ligament or cause a pull, a strain, a rupture, a tear, something like that. So it is very important. And this is why I like the Dumper series was caution is warranted when you're introducing cars in 1902. People should buyer beware. People should be aware of what to do and what not to do in a car. So when they were talking about, or James Fisher in his blurb about ARX, he goes, now you need to be very careful coaching how to exert force against this thing and how to do it in good form. And we think that's exactly right. There's a wrong way to use any tool. And just because ARX is far safer than a gravity-based tool, for those reasons I mentioned, does not mean that you're just absolved of all responsibility of not being an idiot with the machine. So, the Renix guys, I like what they're doing, and I like how deeply they think about it. And I think if they, had an alpha in one of their facilities and just messed around with it for a year and tried to adapt it to and perform their preferred protocol using ARX, as the months went by, in the absence of all these injuries that they assumed were going to happen, they would come to soften their stance. But that's why we have, there's early adopters and there's people in the middle and then there's the late adopters, to where 100 years later, even equestrians get in their cars to go get groceries and come back. Even though they still like their horses and it's cool, but they still use the cars. And maybe they didn't get them for 70 or 80 years until they were super convinced it was safe. And then now, finally, now that they have airbags, now that there's seat belts, now that there's, cars can get safer over the years. So who knows? Maybe in 20 years, obviously we'll keep developing the safety features and we'll keep developing the software to be more explicit about joint angle and here's what to do and what not to do. And so it's all developing, and it could be 10, 20 years from now, they finally say, oh, okay, now it's safe enough for us to use for our friends and our people in our community who were sworn to help and not to hurt. And so I think that's great too, when they eventually come around to that or not. It's all good. I don't think they need our help. They're doing great. They're doing great stuff. And we say, keep doing what you're doing. And we're on the same team,
Yeah. Yeah. Good response. And I mean, I obviously, ARX are a sponsor of the podcast, but what I'd really try and achieve with this podcast is I want to make it as impartial as possible, because whilst I like ARX and I wouldn't have them as a sponsor if I didn't think the technology was good, I invite you to read the Dumpers series and make up your own mind if you're listening to this. And the Renex guys, if you're listening to this, we welcome your feedback and whether your stance has changed or not in 2019 and in line with the technology changing. I do think this conversation is really productive as long as it's constructive, and there's nothing wrong with criticism. It's just sometimes I think that can go a bit too far and it becomes like a personal attack. And again, that's not just saying the Renex guys do that, although, it's certainly been quite public with some of the stuff on social media, which, perhaps I personally acted immaturely at times, to be quite honest with you. But I kind of went off topic there. But yeah, sometimes it can just, some of this stuff can devolve into,
it's like, who's going to listen to this guy? He shows up to his interview in a white beater, his hair's all messed up, he looks orange. You're going to listen to him about safety? It's like, all right, that's okay, cool. But the point stands, and the same thing if I were to sling mud at one of their personal styles or how they go about things. It's like, well, yeah, Jim, but do you have any retort to the actual substance of what he said? And so I think keeping on that level is always advisable. And yeah, it's a little bit like still railing at the Wright brothers that human flight is impossible when they've been given flights for 5, 6, 7 years now. And every weekend having at the state fair and like, we already know, we're already doing it. Like we've already started the airlines. We're not arguing anymore about whether this would be safe or possible. We're not past the point of discussion, but we're past the point of academic discussion, where if there's something wrong or something dangerous, you better be able to point at the practical result of that in the world that is not good. The injuries that are happening, the wave.
So the burden of proof is on them, kind of thing.
Yeah, and at first, in 2008, 2009, I could see where, you're claiming this machine does this, 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 and this. Burden of proof's on you. But if we're going along and just kind of, okay, thanks, guys. Thanks for your input. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And we have this thing going. And we have, like I mentioned in the cloud, there was over 80,000 ARX workouts that happened in 2018. And that's on pace to be doubled this year. We're already doing it. And so the burden of proof to say that it's harmful or it won't work, even though we have data that shows it working just by the hundreds, and we could pull up all the cloud data. And here's another client who got 77.2% stronger in 9 sessions in 10 weeks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're going to claim it doesn't work, if you're going to claim it's dangerous or make claims about it, this thing that's already happening, then point to the evidence and we'll take a look at it. But your theoretical supposition that this will not work, you can't really say that anymore, because the thing you imagine will or will not happen has already happened or not. And so we'll just keep on keeping on, and we're happy to field questions from anyone, really.
Cool. No, I appreciate it. And I will just take a moment, this opportunity to say, I do encourage people to check out the RenX articles, and I will link to that from the show notes, because if you really want to nerd out on high intensity training and super slow, it's one of the best places for that. And just the people that comment are, very high caliber individuals as well. I noticed they don't do as much these days. I don't know why that is, but there's still a great archive there. And I got to try a lot of the super slow stuff, super slow systems for the first time at my strength studio, Drawing Rec, and I really enjoyed using some of that. So yeah, I know you're more of a ARX through and through, Jim. And you well, yeah, I know you used to use that stuff.
I cut my teeth on like the Arthur Jones stuff was my first. I just had a lucky, blessed sort of few weeks where I was invited to go work out at Jim Flanagan's place with all his first generation, and just having read about all those machines and then getting to see them, and like the first gen, even the plate loaded triceps with the shell cam, and just it was so I'm sort of a nerd about that sort of stuff as well, and so that's why the super slow system stuff, and then the RenX stuff. They're like works of art, and they. So I have a lot of sentimental. I have a lot of sentiment towards those types of pieces of equipment, and so I get it. I'm like kind of on that side as well.
Yeah, but but you would see that now as sort of going backward from what you've told me before, as in you're like. I'm not really interested in using that stuff anymore. I'm quite happy just using ARX and whatever ARX becomes in the future.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you go, you can appreciate a Hattori Hanzo samurai sword. It's like a work of art. And in its day, it was functional. And you better believe it works. 100% effective for what it's designed to do. And you can't claim that it doesn't work. And so to prefer, for our military, to prefer guns over swords isn't shitting on swords, because that's how you did it for hundreds of years, thousands of years, was the best thing available. And by God, it worked. And they're pieces of art, and the craftsmanship is praiseworthy. And so when the military chooses we're going to go ahead and do muskets, thanks. Like even shitty muskets, like where you have to slam the powder in the butt, even that is preferable to a sword for various reasons. So even a bad gun is more effective than a good sword, but that's not shitting on the sword for what it is and what it does. And even today, in a land of technology and all these new things we have, swords still 100% effective. They will still do what they're designed to do. So that's sort of how I see it. If I had to defend myself and I had any tool available, I'd choose certain things. If I have to get strength training, if I have to do strength training and I have any tool available, I would just end up using ARX, which I do. I haven't lifted a weight since 2013, which is not to shit on weights of any kind. It's just a preference based on effectiveness and safety and efficiency. And we just do as well as we can at the time.
I think one of the main issues here is that the chaps in RenX and the inventors, Ken and team behind the Super Slow Systems machines, they don't see them as the horses. They see them as being the best thing available right now, is my understanding. So that's where the disagreement is, right? Whereas you see the ARX as being more advanced, and that's totally fine. But I think that's where there's a big disagreement, and that can perhaps spawn some, unpleasantries between groups.
Well, and I totally see how that would come about if I was invested, not just monetarily, but psychologically in my identity, invested in a certain type of technology, a type of thing, and someone came along and said, hey, this thing is better. So I could take that two ways. One way, I could take it in like good faith, like I was just talking about, where, he's not shitting on the stuff I've been doing. He's just saying he's found something he prefers more. So that's the one good way to sort of take it. The less good way is like what you described. Hey, fuck this guy. I've been using these for years and years and years. They work great. Your shit's dangerous. Your shit's a fad. It's not going to last. It's nonsense, et cetera, like feeling attacked. by hearing other people say what they prefer, hearing that. So I'm saying I prefer ARX, but you might hear that as an attack on what you're doing because you're not doing ARX. And so if you're the type of person who feels attacked or victimized as a default and just is always on the defense, I can absolutely see how this would rile you up. Why anybody saying that their thing is good and it's not your thing, and you see that as an attack, someone's personal preference becomes an attack on you, then yeah, you're gonna have a strong. It'll provoke a strong reaction in you, and I think that's the source of a lot of even back to the infighting we were talking about before. Oh, you're saying your new protocol you're experimenting with and having good results with your clients doing this new thing. Well, that means my thing I'm doing is bullshit. Hey, fuck you. It's like, no. That's not what I'm just saying. I tried a thing.
And we all do it. We all have that. I think all of us get triggered a little bit.
I absolutely, I do that all the time.
You have to catch yourself, don't you? Where you say something or do something stupid. I mean, we all struggle with that. I don't know. I know very few people who are so stoic in the face of, something that really challenges their paradigm,
Yeah. Well, and, it's a very hard thing to do it's that personal investment. Like, it's like people who jog or, whether, even Kenneth Cooper towards the end of his life, was talking about, I think his quote was, I'm paraphrasing, but something like anybody who does exercise for more than, say an hour a week or to some smaller amount, anybody who does exercise for more than this amount is not doing it for purely physical reasons. Now, he was the guy who was recommending, of course, an hour of jogging per day and through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the man who ruined America's knees rather than the man who saved America's hearts. But that paradigm shift, that took him 40 years to come and realize. So if you had told him, and many people did back in the early 70s, hey, we're doing this other thing and we're finding all the same cardiovascular beneficial adaptations as your hour a day thing. What do you think about that? Well, he doesn't like that one bit. And it wasn't an attack. We're just saying, here's this thing that works, and he feels attacked. And I do it, you do it. We have people, I get this response when people come up with new ARX protocols. Hey, my place, I tried this thing with some clients where I give them 4 negative only reps, and then we do the 5th negative, stop halfway through and hold isometric, and then we do some concentric only. And I've been doing this, and here's the numbers, and the numbers are good, and these are better than we usually see. And now what am I supposed to be, some sort of idiot because I didn't think of that? I feel personally, it's like, and at first I feel like, well, I've been doing this longer than anyone. I think screw you guys, and why don't you just do what I tell you to do? So there's that inner.
I love it. There's going to be different ARX tribes,
and half the people will paint their ARX blue, and half of them spray paint them red, and just be like, which ARX tribe are you on, bro? Like this is my corner. You're in the wrong side of town. Sorry, bro. We do negative only here. You go.
Yeah, we do 30-30, nothing else.
Yeah, 30-30. That's it, bro. Get out. Here's a bandana. Come join us. So yeah, there's even no matter how small your scope is, we're all human, and so we need to all try our best to, like you were talking about. No need for a personal attack that won't really help your argument or anything. It's just the substantive point of the argument. You address that, and let's all try to be good people and respectful.
Awesome. So I wanted to just finish up on some stuff about business very quickly. I'm just curious, actually, who have you got? Have you expanded? As in, have you got more clients now, or affiliates in the UK or Europe at the moment for ARX?
Not in the UK. There's Matt in Brighton that you met. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but there's something coming to, I want to say somewhere near London. Not allowed to say anymore, but it should be this fall, end of summer in the fall. So just be on the lookout for that. There's a thing that
I'll book my plane tickets.
Well, there should. My fingers crossed for. I need to be like employee of the month just these next couple of months, so that so I can get invited out on that install. See, so I got to be best behavior. But then, so we've got a guy in Madrid who's got a couple of machines in a facility in Madrid. There's a couple of some guys in Zurich who they just now opened their second facility, and they're actually, we were talking before about the Carol bikes off camera or off the record. These guys have it's like I don't know if you're aware of In-N-Out Burger. It's an American fast food chain.
Yeah.
So their menu is famously simple: hamburger, cheeseburger, double cheeseburger, fries, drink. And that's the menu. That's all they do. And it's classic and it's great. So these guys in Zurich, they have ARX and Carol bikes. And they go, here's the protocol. I think they do just kind of legs push pull of some kind, and then throw you on a Carol bike, GTFO fitness. Off you go. And so in fact, that's still in the ether.
That stands for get the fuck out.
GTFO fitness. That's I wish someday I'll open up a facility like that. But it's like 20 or 30 minute sessions. You get your ARX, your Carol, and then you fuck off for a number of days. And so they just opened their second location in Zurich there. But other than that, it's a lot of opportunity to make hay while the sun shines out there in Europe.
No, it's just good to know because obviously, as I said, I'm thinking about ARX for a future opportunity. But before that, I might want to just do some more testing of ARX locally to me.
Sure.
So we were talking about before we went live, sourcing trainers. You know, one of the biggest problems or challenges in personal training and especially in high intensity personal training is finding good trainers because, you know, you obviously, it's difficult for a lot of business owners to empower people and to see a future where they are being replaced by trainers because, and this is the same for all business owners. You like the way you do things. If someone can't do it to your standard, you struggle with, you know, empowering them and letting go of that. But you know, I do sort of empathize because when it comes to high intensity training, it's difficult to find people that perhaps really appreciate it, especially if they've been indoctrinated by a lot of conventional wisdom in health and fitness, and you're trying to get them to learn and appreciate this other way of looking at things. And so there's a challenge there in terms of finding those people and retaining those people and getting them passionate about it. And then the other challenge, but in the case of ARX, what makes this a little easier is that there is a little less onus on the trainer. Clearly, as you stated in this podcast, there's still, you know, it's not like you can just leave the client in the machine and, you know, let them get on with it. You still have to supervise them. You still have to make sure they use it properly, but you don't necessarily have to be an absolute ninja when it comes to controlling turnarounds and some of those finer details. So, you know, in your experience, what have you seen in terms of your clients, you know, ARX business owners, do in terms of successfully finding trainers for an ARX business, and maybe you can comment on what I said there about, you know, maybe it's easier to find a trainer and retain a trainer because, you know, you don't need to necessarily find someone. How do I say this? You've got a much longer list to choose from because you don't necessarily need that special individual who can really embrace HIIT, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't need someone to like show up on your doorstep who's like, yeah, I'm really into Arthur Jones and I've read Body by Science and I'm really, and the
I've got Arthur Jones's tattoo, right, like his face tattooed on my chest. Like, yeah.
Just check this out. Just look,
yeah. I don't need to interview. Yeah, my chest hair is mustache. See, we got it just right. And I've manicured the entire. I did some chestscaping. Point here is it's a tragedy when you have someone show up on your doorstep and they're all ready to go and they're excited and you don't have anybody for them. You don't have any clients for them. Because let's say you haven't built your business to the point where your systems and processes are in place and everything's just one-off, word of mouth. They like you, so they come here. And so when someone shows up, and the opportunities are all around us. So when you have an opportunity for a young go-getter who's really interested in this, it would be so great to have a process in place, like an evergreen funnel, where you could say, hang out here for 3 months, kid. You'll have 30, 40 clients. If you're good, you'll retain 30 or 40 clients by the end of that 3 or 4 or 5 months. And we're doing things. It's easier to have someone join than to say to someone new like that, hey, go ahead and create your entire
business. You can work people out here, but you're on the hook for, you have to do your own advertising, your own marketing, and bring people in. We're going to do nothing. We're not responsible for that. We have the machines. We spend a lot of money. We pay rent here and we have the machines. And so you bring everybody in. You want to avoid that situation, even though it feels very righteous. It feels like, well, screw these Johnny-come-lately mercenaries, think they could just come in and take advantage of my advertising and my positioning in the community and et cetera, et cetera. No. You might think you want to feel righteous, but what you actually want to do is to help the people in your community. And by adding this great new trainer, you can do that by bringing more people in. But most often, it's not that people show up on your doorstep like that. It's that you're in need of people and you have a good system built out and you've taken the classes you've learned, you're listening to podcasts like this one, and you've taken some of the ideas and your business is growing, but you don't have people up to your standard. And so, before even mentioning anything about ARX, it's just tough. You have to have something other than just an if you build it, they will come sort of attitude. You might feel proud of what you've built. You might feel like I have the best tools available. I have top of the line MedX, or even I've invested in some RenX stuff. Like I have this very unique, very valuable, highly desirable setup. Why aren't the trainers flocking to me to come train with me? And I feel like this myself and mine, and I've done it and it's valuable, and you have that sort of idea. And so that can be a little bit of a bummer. And when you go to look for people, then you have that chip on your shoulder and you have that idea that it's going to take so long to train them to my standard that sometimes why do I even start? Why would I even, you'll convince yourself, I don't want to expand anyway. It'll just be a big pain in my ass. More money, more problems. I'll just stay in my big fish in a small pond and do my thing. But then at that, you're not helping as many people as you could be. If you took the time to invest in, what should you do? How about a system or a process for training people? So that's what Luke Carlson, for instance, does so well. Not a lot of people have thought about building out this giant process from beginning to end, like cradle to grave. Like, here's your pathway for how you can start with me here. And you do these things, you're going to get to this level. And then you do these things, you're going to get to this level. If I am a new trainer and I walk into a pitch like that, holy shit, this guy knows what he's talking about. The facility has all these other trainers I can talk to. I'm in. I'll do this. But if I walk into a guy who says, here's the super slow manual and here's the RenX manual, and I'm going to have you just kind of hang out with me while I do my training, and read this stuff, and in a month we'll give you a little test, and also it's going to be this many months before you can even train someone, and then after all that investment of time and your own money and time, we don't really have any systems in place for you. So it's just, this is the end, and whether you have 2 clients or 100, doesn't really matter to us. Just do your thing, I guess. So your failure to prepare has prepared your new hire to fail. And so that's a bummer, and that's why it's so hard. And then when ARX comes in to the picture, it's that the principles are all the same, but the tool changes. So now, for instance, when I was training super slow, I mentioned this on our first episode, but the idea that everything that was a pain in my ass, is all solved. I didn't have a stopwatch or a trip counter. I didn't have a manila folder. There's no chart. There's no pen. There's no hanging it on the machine and forgetting where I put it. I don't have to pin any weight stacks, nor be trained in how to pin the weight stacks. I don't have to do all the seat positioning, nor be trained in how to do the seat positionings. I don't need to try to guess what weight to use for someone, nor be trained on how to guess what weight to use for someone. So each of these things I no longer have to do. I also don't need to be trained how to do. So that saves a lot of time. And all the principles, all the rhyme and reason for here's why we count down from 10 seconds. And here's why that's important. Now, these turnarounds, we're going to talk to you for an hour about how to coach a turnaround. Cool. But what if that was done for you? Now you just saved both of us an hour. That's great. So the speed is done for you. The weight selection, all done for you. The turnarounds, smoother than a human could do them, and it's perfect every time, and you don't have to coach it. The data is all captured automatically. I don't need to spend time. Here's how we do our filing cabinets, and here's how this works, and you keep and the blue colored sheet is for the A work, and the pink one is for the B. It's all done. And so for everything that in practice is all done for you with ARX, that's another thing you don't need to train someone how to do. And in a perfect world, they would know the rhyme and reason for why ARX is doing all these things as they take people through the workouts. But if you give me 60 minutes with a person who has a vague fitness background, like they just feel like they want to do this, they've spent some time in the gym and they want to be a trainer, I could teach them how to give safe, effective, efficient, maximally optimal ARX workouts in not more than 60 minutes. And the quality of the workout they gave would be the same quality of the workout I myself would give. Now, afterwards, they wouldn't be able to answer any questions. They don't know shit. But the actual act of giving the workout is now the easiest part. And then as they go on, they're given workouts, they're providing the service to the public. As they go on, you can have them do some research. Hey, here's Body by Science. Go read this. Hey, here's the RENX manual. There's a lot of cool background information on what's happening inside the muscle when this happens. And here's, and so forth and so on. So ARX just takes the learning curve and shrinks it down to, like I said, not more than 60 minutes. I could have someone, they wouldn't know why. It's like Antonio Banderas when he did Desperado in the 90s. He didn't speak a lick of English, but they taught him his lines phonetically. So he didn't even know what he was saying. He just learned the syllables. And it worked. It made millions of dollars. So it provided the service. So they would, in a way of thinking, be giving the workouts just by rote. They'd be giving it mindlessly, but it would be just as effective at first. They would be doing it by rote. Now, as the weeks go on, they learn and get a background, and they can explain why it was working in the same way that Antonio Banderas eventually did actually learn English. But for the moviegoers, they don't care. They want entertainment. And for the public, they need strength training. They don't need the grand poobah of all physiologic knowledge to be administering this thing. You don't need that anymore. So yeah, that's how ARX can sort of shrink the learning curve, where your field of applicants then opens up very, very wide. You could just take a young, good-looking, good attitude kid fresh out of college, could be like a kinesiology major, exercise science major, or just someone who's a go-getter who likes this field and wants to start somewhere. That person can, if he's personable or she is personable, can attract clients and give maximally effective workouts right away, and then catch up knowledge-wise after the fact. And ARX allows you to do that.
Yeah, that was awesome. Couple of things I just want to highlight. What you said really well is that, you still have to have the principles of, hiring the right people and the systems in place to ensure that they succeed and they're a good fit for your business. And that's, as you said there, Luke Carlson and Discover Strength do that so well, because they're very staff orientated. They build a business around the personal trainer, and they've got cradle to grave. Not heard that before. I love that. Systems in place to help them progress through their career, and obviously that's a win-win. It's a win in terms of making sure they're getting better, they're being fulfilled in their career, but then also they're adding maximum value to the mission in your business. Something that echoed what you said is the chaps over at Everstrong, Owen Dockham and Abe Williams, who have both been on the podcast. They've done a wonderful operations manual for their staff, and they kindly uploaded that to the membership, which is a great template for the other colleagues to use in the industry. And what occurred to me is that unlike non-ARX gyms, you could literally give that manual to someone and they'd almost know what they need to know to run a workout. Obviously, I'm sure there'll be a few gaps and it's not ideal, but it's amazing what you could do with just that manual. It's very detailed and it's got instructions on how to deliver workout protocols and ARX, all that kind of thing. But that solves that problem in terms of the enormous amount of time consumed in trying to train someone and get them up to speed. So there's a number of different benefits here. There's firstly, you've got a bigger pool of people potentially to choose from. And then secondly, it's less time consuming to actually, get them up to speed, and it's far more scalable and allows you as a business owner to focus on other things and grow your business. So yeah, and I'll obviously put links to all of that. Luke's actually coming on the podcast in a few weeks to do an episode on the goose and the golden egg, which is all about looking after your trainers. It was a great presentation at Rec this year, but if anyone's like me, I don't take notes. I used to take notes. I don't take notes anymore. If I know people say, if you take notes, you learn better.
Yeah.
I feel if you try and write down everything, you miss everything because you don't actually really absorb it. So I tend to take down keywords, but I try and take as little notes as possible. I try just to absorb the information. But it was one of those presentations where it was so dense that I felt that it would be better if we did a podcast on it to actually go through the details. So that'd be good. But no, that was awesome. And I think what you said there was helpful to new and existing people in the HIIT and ARX space in terms of the strategy around finding trainers and how they should think about that. Last question for you, Jim, before we wrap up. What have you changed your mind about in the last year related to exercise or high intensity training? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, two things that come to mind are one is like a process that started in maybe 2014, 2015, and is just continuing on. And that's the process of things falling away that I used to think were necessary or important or required. And there's that idea of for instance, as a matter of safety, I, for instance, would in 2013, 2014, would always start every movement in the concentric because obviously if an injury is going to occur, it's going to occur with a high force output, so high that it exceeds the structural capacity of the involved tissues. And so that is going to happen in the eccentric. And so, especially with ARX, you want to start on the concentric. So, okay, off I go, starting on the concentric. And then a couple of times I kind of mess up and I accidentally start someone on the eccentric, especially at trade shows. Everyone's going real fast. You get in and that you get in. All right, now I'm just going to give you 4 reps chest press. We're going to do this. And so then I was doing negative only with several of my clients. And then when I wanted to add concentric work back in, I wanted to somehow retain the fresh eccentrics. Because if you look at the data, when you do a maximum concentric and then turn it around instantly into an eccentric to the second phase, the peaks are not nearly as high, and the staying power of the force production during the eccentric is not as robust. The peaks are skinnier instead of with more width. And so I thought, well, how can I get those same high peaks and that same width on the eccentric, but still get the glycogen depletion of the concentric? And so I thought, well, let's just start on the eccentric with every rep. And so you'd have a fresh eccentric without the impediment of the preceding concentric. And so, but then I thought, but that's dangerous. And then I thought, well, where did I learn that was dangerous? I said, well, that was like in 2009. That was like years ago. Someone told me at some point that you never want to do that. Well, let me try it. Maybe I'm driving 20 miles an hour in a 70 mile an hour zone. And so okay. So I tried it. Turned out everyone's fine. It's no big deal. It's not a problem. And so you're just, I can go faster than 20 miles an hour on this 4-lane expressway. Oh, cool. And so that fell away. And a couple other, we were talking about, I think in the first episode, form discrepancy. And form discrepancy is not desirable, and it's not good. So that's one of the reasons you want good form with weights. Another reason you want good form is because the lack of good form produces injury. You can have that big weight you selected, which is acting on you all the time, dangerously. If you mess up your form, the weight doesn't adjust to you and snaps it. You'll pull something, strain something, tear something, rupture something. But with ARX, it's no longer that death sentence. If you get wonky form and you mess it up at some point, the resistance just drops because you can't produce that much force through rickety form. And so I became less of a form Nazi when people are using ARX, and everything was fine. And now I still encourage good form, and good form is still optimal and desirable, and that's the goal. But I wouldn't freak out if someone does something weird, especially at trade shows when you're just showing people the technology. They don't know anything and how to do anything. I used to be very nervous, and now after years and years of seeing nobody get hurt with all sorts of weird form things, even though I still encourage proper form, and like you saw at REC, telling people all the usual, relax your neck, shoulders down away from the ears, breathe smooth, all the usual stuff we know and love. If someone geeks out a minute, I don't freak out anymore. Someone needs to start for their protocol, they need to start on the eccentric. Sure, there's more latitude there now. So that's a process that's been ongoing over the last, even up till just even months and weeks ago. Things falling away, things I used to think were required, limitations that used to apply that no longer apply, and I'm just now realizing that they no longer apply. That's along the same lines. Like if you work out more than the once per week or more than the twice per week, your muscles are going to fall off, and your central nervous system is going to, like I had someone say just the other day, who was doing a demo, like, so how do you avoid central nervous system burnout if you're doing ARX more than the once per week? And I said, well, what do you mean? You know, the central nervous system burnout. All right. Well, how are you measuring that? I feel like I might be getting sick more often. Okay. And so out of all of the variables that could cause a sickness, you've been able to remove the confounding variables and really identify that it's your training frequency. Well, it's just the burnout. I've read about it. Central CNS burns out. and I think, well, okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying, give me some evidence. So I've had, with the Oura Ring, I think we showed this last time, that a lot of people have these. This senses one of the things it senses. It's heart rate variability while you sleep, which is an indicator of nervous system fitness, and then also just your pulse rate and your breaths per minute, all of which are surrogate measures for how capable and adaptable your nervous system currently is. And so I've done even every other day for like a couple weeks of ARX work, and it's just fine. It's no big deal. Like, it's not. You've been told that this thing's going to hurt you, and it just won't. And what you find, and that we went through this a little bit in the first episode, but what you find is that if you psychologically understand that you're doing this every other day, even your voluntary 100% maximum isn't going to be a life or death effort. But if you know that you're only going to do this once every 14 days, and it's the 14th day, oh man, it's the old joke, about it's an adult sex ed class, and the teacher says, all right, so who here has sex once every week? Well, half the class raised their hand. Now, who here has sex once every month? And then raise their hand. Once every 6 months, a couple stragglers. Once a year? And there's one guy with the biggest grin you've ever seen in your life, and he's waving his hand. Sir, you only have sex once a year? He goes, yeah. She says, well, why are you smiling so big? He goes, because tonight's the night. So when you only work out every 14 days, that's going to be the most intense, big central nervous system smacking workout. And from that workout, sure, spend some days recovering. But unless you're an elite level athlete or you're doing something like that, you simply don't need to worry about it. So those are some of the things I've learned and changed my mind about in the last say year or number of years, was just piece by piece. All these things I used to think were required are still desirable. They're still something to think about, but they're no longer strictly deal breakers for how I should organize my training.
No, it's really, really eye-opening and interesting point of view. And this is a weird thing about, we're recording this, but we've not yet published the first part, and you may listen to that, and that might have. But it's good that you remembered what you said about auto-regulation, about how the body does that, and people can listen to part one to get more on that as well. Jim, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think we've gone into territory which I've not explored much before, so hopefully the listeners really enjoyed it. Anything? Oh, actually, yeah. Before I ask best way to contact you, any kind of parting thoughts on what we talked about today that you want to share before we wrap up?
Not really pertaining to what we talked about, but just in general, we touched on at the beginning of the first episode, speaking of the first episode, how I seem to be always like in sort of a good mood in general. Yeah, and one of the things right. I glossed over, like I didn't give any like...
It's ARX, right?
What? It's just all, you can't help but be in a good goddamn mood. So the idea is I kind of glossed over one of the mechanics of it. And the mechanics of it it all kind of starts with your mood. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, you're in a good mood, but why is that important? It changes. A lot of people's mood just changes on what they're observing. And it turns out it's a little, I don't know if you know about Joe Dispenza, the brain researcher who does some talks and stuff. But I'll
Name
send
rings
you
a bell.
a video. But I've been following his material for a while, and something that was very salient years ago I heard was, your mood, if it persists, it becomes your temperament. And so your mood, if you control that, it becomes your temperament. And if your temperament persists over weeks and months, that becomes then your personality. And so Jim's a happy guy. He's just like that. So, no, he's not just like that. The mood is where it starts. And small hinges swing big doors. So your mood seems like a small, insignificant thing. Very, very important. And when I'm in a good mood, I think better, I talk better, I make better decisions. Everything seems to go better when I'm in a good mood. So it's a very practical and efficient tool to use to maximize my own productivity and effectiveness in the world, is to have this good mood. And then if that can persist all the way till it becomes a personality, well, that's huge momentum and leverage that you have going for yourself. So just wanted to mention, that's one of the things I forgot to kind of suss out in the first thing, that that's why I'm like this, so to speak.
I appreciate it. I mean, as I said to you at Rec, it was, I meant it as a compliment, although I was quite like, sometimes when I'm really curious about something, I can come across quite harsh and offensive, because I was like, Jim, are you faking it? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But actually it was because I just admired your energy, and your optimism. It's really, really infectious, and made you very fun to hang out with. And so, no, I appreciate you saying that. And what's the best way for people to find out more about you?
Nothing really about me personally out online, except, like I mentioned last time, the Travis County DA office. So you could send me an email at jim@arxfit.com, jim@arxfit.com. If you have any questions, if you have, hey, you mentioned this, can you talk more about this? I'm happy to answer personal emails and get on the phone with someone, chat. Like, that's cool. Other than that, the ARX Instagram page and Facebook page, you can follow along what we're doing there. Our YouTube channel has a bunch of videos with yours truly on voiceover on some of them, and some of the trade show videos with a certain mustache gentleman blowing minds and melting faces and giving people the medicine. So those are some of the best ways to keep in touch.
Awesome. Sounds good. And to all those listening, to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/Jim-Keen-2, number 2. I couldn't think of a better domain than that. It's probably not great,
that's a sexy name. Yeah. Electric Boogaloo.
And for all episodes, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/podcast. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.